I remember Logan Paul, the favourite of the Pauls. Unless, of course, you're including Paul from Paul's Has It All, Paul's Warehouse. Still closing down, 10 years strong. What a bargain. He was talking about the fact that his YouTube career really took off when he moved to LA because there's just so many possibilities. You collab, so many sponsorship deals, the usual things, because it's the hub of entertainment, right? And that's why, even in this day where you can virtually live anywhere, as I've proven, because I live in, Australia's Hollywood, Lithgow. We've got a busy Macca's. That's our Hollywood sign. They go to these places still, even though the tyranny of distance isn't really a thing anymore. They still go to these places for obvious those reasons that were aforementioned. But I think a real piece of that puzzle that is never really discussed is that your environment shapes you, and that is a really nice lesson that I want to hone in on today. I sound like a bloody host of Gardening Australia. That is just lovely flowers. All right, let's talk about this lesson. Oh, beautiful. But shaping you being shaped by your environment. Everybody likes to think that they're the guy in that whatever that movie was that huge Jack Nicholson says that like I like the environment to be a product of me. Everyone thinks they're a boss like that, but actually, as shown by his accent, your environment shapes you a lot more than you would imagine. For instance, there was a study done with graffiti where they put youths through and just started getting them used to walking through an alleyway that was filled with graffiti. And then they put youths through one that was cleaned up and was purposefully kept clean by the researchers. And so those became the two hangout spots, right? After about a few months, the amount of graffiti in the already graffiti place was, the new graffiti that was put on it was 70 times more than the area that wasn't. There was just little dribs and drabs in the already clean place. And so obviously, there's some bad eggs everywhere, but most people are cued by their environment that it's okay to do this in this environment, it's not okay to do that in that environment. Do you remember being a kid and you go to one of your poorer friends' house, the Kenny of the South Park Quartet, you go to their house and it was a shithole, and so you just felt like, yeah man, I'll just spill milk on the carpet, no one cares, it's already crap anyway. But then you go to your really rich friend's house where there'd just be, I don't know, that butler from The Nanny there, just Miles being like, nah, I wouldn't dream of it, and you're like, oh, I wasn't going to do it anyway, I was just going to put it back in the fridge. You can feel sometimes how powerful these cues are on your subconscious, and in your day-to-day life, obviously you can shape your habits without, in any environment that you're in, right? Like, I'm not saying that you can't, that if you're from a poor area, that you can't study just because you're in a poor area. There's thousands of counterexamples that prove the opposite, but it is more difficult than if you go with your environment. Be like water. This is, oh God, how many times am I going to give props to Asians? Subscribe to find out, but I'm going to have to do it again, I'm sorry. But the Japanese, there was a study where psychologists were asking Japanese people to look at a fish tank, and they were asking Americans to look at a fish tank. And the Americans, and they said, what do you see? And the Americans said, I see some fish. There's a cool octopus in the center there, man. But then they asked the Japanese people and they said, oh, I see some seaweed and water. They're looking at the environment. They are trained by their culture to look at the environment, which is another reason why their study reasons are so much higher than ours. The other reason, of course, is that they kind of push them to the point of suicide. But who knows which one's more important and influential? But we do know that there is numerous psychological studies that say this, that your environment shapes you, that if you're trained to look at if you just start thinking about what environment am I currently in, what is this environment telling me to do, you start getting sensitive to that, you will see that you start moving into environments automatically that help your study habits. So, a massive reason why I moved up into the wilderness is because when I just look outside, I just see World Heritage Park all around me. And that shapes me to just be like, you're in a safe, happy, zen place. So I feel all relaxed all the time. So I can sit there and read about really fucked up things in the government and just be like, okay, so Mount Kosciuszko is dying because of climate change and Brumpy infestation, but that's some nice trees over there. And when you was in this urban environment and all you heard was like, beep, beep, get out of the way, Ash, or hey, I'm walking here. Just learning about those things makes you just get all angry and tensed up, and it starts having an impact on you. And also, I've been able to pump out way more purely because my environment's changed. I have exactly the same access to things. Actually, another reason was that I got rid of my internet, and I heard, how cute is this, that there was some little kid in year 12 that got rid of all his social media to study for the HSC because these videos taught me to. Well, reach for the stars, kid. Good for you. Brings a tear to my eye. And everyone else would be doing that as well, even the 40-year-olds that are watching this. That's right. It's never too young to start. But you will feel, this is why very rich people end up buying a house or a cabin in the retreats. Like the guys from The Chaser did that. And when they were starting a new season, they'd all go into this log cabin that they collectively bought so they could just be out in nature and really think about how to do something that's borderline jackassy. And so you should be thinking about how you can be doing the same things. When I didn't have the money to live wherever I wanted, what did I do? I went to the library. Why? Because when you're in the library and there's just a bunch of people that look like Reverend Lovejoy's wife going, shh, you realize that this is a place of quiet and solitude and study. So your brain goes, okay, this is a place where you're supposed to study. And you will see that if you start going to the library, which is why a lot of the kids that did really well in the HSC, you'll see them hanging out there. All the Martin Princes of the world, they're all hanging out at the library. They're still doing it now. When they need to study, they go there because it psychologically induces you that you are supposed to study in this environment. That's why. If you study in your room, which is when you see all these people that get, your 60s and your 50s in your HSC, they're always studying in their room, and their room is filthy, and they don't clean it. And there's no plants in the room, which again, you should clean your room and put a pot plant in there. But on top of that, you should try and make a space that actually is a study. If you have that, even if it make it the living room, but you should be training your brain that this is the place where I study, because as soon as you do that and you get into that one habit, it kicks off all the other habits of, okay, well now my brain has to be in like that beeline beta flat that happens when you start meditating. All these things start happening when you trick your brain into saying that this is the area where I'm supposed to be doing this activity. It's the same with if you wanted to do fitness, you should probably go to a gym, or if you don't have a gym, you make your living room the area where you start working out. You try and space out these things throughout your house, these activities throughout your house, because when you change your environment, your mind changes. See you next week.